girl from Switzerland, right? Greta Thunberg. She is a girl around our age here, and in that she went on strike in order to raise awareness about climate change. Now, she did what she did because lack of awareness about climate change in Switzerland. The key here is lack of awareness. Now, why did this happen? Why this lack of awareness about completely impactful things such as climate change? Now, the key here is that we see this entire situation shows the key uh, that will play a role in this entire debate today, which is communications that play a large part in climate change awareness. Now, as it stands, people can say whatever they want on media, social media, and all that in the guise of freedom of speech, even untrue ones. Now, for this debate today, everyone has to concede the fact, the unequivocal truth that climate change is caused by humans, by man themselves. Now, in order for this debate to happen smoothly, we all have to concede that fact. Now, why does the denying about this truth actually lead to such detrimental consequences? Now, before any of that, let's define the motion today. This House would ban any speech and publication denying man-made climate change. Now, how government chooses to define publication here is that any means of communication with the platform that reaches a lot of masses, such as newspapers, magazines, social media, television, are all considered publication. And if they deny man-made climate change, which is to say the truth, then this will actually lead to dire consequences. Now, the stakeholders of this debate today are the climate itself, our world, and countries and future generations as a whole. Now, our burden of the opposition side's burden of proof is that you have to tell us what are the benefits of, of denying climate change? How does it outweigh the harms? And for our side, government, we will win this debate today by proving to you that freedom of speech can and should be compromised for a greater purpose, which is uh, awareness on climate change and, by extension, averting climate change as a whole, as people. So, since this is a policy debate, our proposal is this: how we deter people from how we ban any speech and publication denying man-made climate change is this: we set rules and regulations, set deterrents. If any mass media tries to publish anything regarding denying man-made climate change, so how this will happen is that they're going to get a fee at least, and jail at most. So how do we classify this? Jail time, like the most crime, like most highest crime is a high profile mass media news report such as BBC or such as that. They will reporters who deny climate change will get jailed, and people can actually, and for social media influencers who deny climate change, they can in fact get reported for this and get fined. In order to deter any misconduct, such as like manipulation of media, editing, and all that, thorough investigations will be conducted in order to prevent baseless accusations when it regards to media manipulation. So now that I've set up this whole case, why I have done this, why this motion stands, is because not telling the public about climate change will in fact decrease awareness. Now, and why this motion exists in the first place is because if we postpone any of these necessary actions, is the ones who will suffer most, the bystanders, will pay the price. Bystanders being the future generation, and the bystanders' costs outweigh the people who want freedom of speech and all that. Um, their needs outweigh the people right now's. So, and it is why we argue for the statutory ban on climate denialism in form of mass media. So, moving on to my first argument for my side, government, is that climate denialism, which is again the belief that climate change caused by human activity is not occurring, will in fact um, be detrimental because its main goal is to produce doubt and not truth. Now, why this is true and important is because climate change should not be hidden by the public by means of mass media. Because, as we know, a sheep mindset will occur in the consumers of mass media because people can be influenced by their peers to adopt certain behaviors and beliefs that are largely emotional rather than rational basis. So, in this way, climate denialists actually bring harm by blocking
Yeah, I think
necessary actions on climate change. And primarily, they harm future generations and people in developing countries. Yes, what is it?
isn't restricting freedom of speech is a form of dictatorship and it's a very cruel thing to do.
Uh, I believe, as I said, the the benefits outweigh the um, the compromisation of freedom of speech because again, this is all for the betterment of the future generation, and we have proof to you because of that. It should be compromised. So, so the impact of this is that misinformed people who do not understand climate change will be influenced by mass media by these so-called freedom of speech people, and we do not deny like the importance of rights of human freedom of speech, but we are just saying that climate change is more important than freedom of speech in this case. So people can be vulnerable to manipulation from media. So it will create an echo chamber, which is an environment where people only encounter information or opinions that reflect or reinforce their own. So in this way, people are unprepared for the future, and climate as a whole will suffer because of it. So, on the comparative, we are able to provide better reassurance of information to these people on a higher volume when as compared to the opposition side. So, our preemption is freedom of speech, the choice to prioritize environment or freedom of speech, and we say we prioritize environment. So therefore, environment is more important to create a world where future generations can live in a livable environment. And with that, I've never been prouder to propose. Thank you.
Okay, this sounds like to thank the Prime Minister for his speech. I'd like to invite the the leader of opposition to start the opposition debate. Here.
Thank you very much. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, the government today is a cruel government trying to take away the rights of the human for freedom of speech. Before that, few rebuttals. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister stated that freedom of speech should be compromised for the change of climate, for the change of the issue at hand, which is climate change. We from the opposition side believe that this is totally wrong based on 3 levels of analysis. The first level, why is it true that freedom of speech cannot and must not be compromised? The first is that it is a fundamental right of the human, and the government may not interfere with a fundamental right. The second is that people must be allowed to say whatever they want it is their opinion, and as I stated before, it is their right. Second layer of analysis, why is it bad if freedom of speech is not allowed? First, people would of course be angry that their opinions will not be heard by others and not be heard by the government. As a democratic country or a democratic government, you have to allow people to give out and voice out their opinion in whatever state it whatever situation it is in. And it is bad because it is a form of dictatorship which the government is implementing into this debate by not allowing people to give out their opinion, is that they are forcing everyone to think the same thing without allowing everyone to have different opinions with each other. But what if we allow the freedom of speech? People can say whatever they want to say, and debates and discussion would happen in order to solve this issue at hand. But most importantly, the whole case of the government side is that the benefits of banning freedom of speech or their opinion is outweighs the benefits that it will get from to change climate change. But from the opposition side, we believe that this is very wrong, because what the government should do is not banning freedom of speech, but take stricter action. Do actions that will change climate, that will solve climate change, not banning people opinions which will not do anything, and even if it do something, it is less likely to benefit a lot to solve climate change, ladies and gentlemen. No, thank you. And some actions that should be taken would be provide more policies to solve the climate change issue, and make more programs from the government. This is the actual role of the government, not banning freedom of speech. But before that, some models or the stand of the opposition side. Firstly, we must understand that this debate is not whether climate change is man-made or not man-made. This debate is solely on the pros and cons of banning people expressing their opinions. The government must understand that. And the second model, expressing your opinion. In this debate, the opinion that we are addressing is whether climate change is a man-made or climate change is not man-made. So this is a contradicting opinion. And we believe that contradicting opinion is very important. You cannot just let everyone have the same opinion without contradictions, without opposition. Like even in today's motion, we are debating on agreeing and disagreeing with a motion. So that is the case. We need someone to disagree with an opinion in order to know whether our opinion is actually the best opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we should not ban any speech or publication denying man-made climate change, because we would like to know whether the opinion that the government is forcing everyone to take on, to understand, is it actually true? So that is the importance of not banning this freedom of speech, ladies and gentlemen. And as I stated before, our third model, we say that banning is not the best policy to solve climate change whatsoever, because it does not work, and it does not work, and it is not wrong to let people give out their freedom of speech. And if it is not wrong, why should we ban it, ladies and gentlemen? Our aim from the opposition side is to say that by banning the freedom of speech, it will not solve anything, but will create more problems. As I stated before, people will be mad. The burden of proof from the opposition side is that we would like to protect the democracy and ideas and also the freedom of speech. But what the government must prove is that how by banning these opinions, it will create change to the climate problem that we have in today's world. In the status quo, people are allowed to express their concerns and belief and opinions. And we believe that this is the best way, and we should let it be, meaning that the status quo is good and should not be interfered with. Why is it true that it is good for people to express their belief? Because firstly, the Prime Minister mentioned about books and magazines, but also social media is also involved in this, because social media is an open platform where people can just give any opinions into their speech, into writings. And we believe that it is good for people to express their opinion, because opinions will be taken into consideration in order to have a fruitful and good discussion. So stay with the status quo. Do not ban the freedom of speech for people to disbelieve in something. So moving on to my argument, which is freedom of speech must be upheld. Why is it true? It is true because when we give them a platform to express their opinions, thought and opinions are given in different perspectives. And this different perspective is what should be considered by the government in order to plan a suitable action, not just by taking one side of an opinion. And this is clearly unfair. So why is it good that freedom of speech is upheld for the people? First, this is very important. When freedom of speech is upheld, they can actually learn the truth. So the opposition side is also allowing people to learn the correct truth about climate change through this freedom of speech. Because when they actually post something to social media saying that indeed in our debate that climate change is not man-made, and then a man-made a user that believes that climate change is man-made can correct them and discuss with them. So this discussion will spark education to the whole entire users of the social media. So why is it important that we upheld the freedom of speech? Is because opinions can be changed. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past few minutes, I've been talking to you about why the government is useless this motion is useless for the government in order to make a severe, impactful change to the climate change problem. Thank you very much.
Okay, this House thanks the Leader of Opposition for his speech. I'd like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
I just like to confirm if I'm audible. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're audible.
Begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, in this motion today, this House will ban any speech and publication denying man-made climate change. 3 things I'd like to propose in my speech today. The first is rebuttals from the other side of the House. Second is I'll be reinforcing the things that my Prime Minister has stated, and afterwards I'll be giving my own points to support why we should bring home the debate for today. Ladies and gentlemen, first things first, rebuttals. Coming from the Leader of Opposition, right? He talked about how the freedom of speech, the benefits of freedom of speech outweighs the things that we're trying to talk about today. If an opinion, okay, we're talking about how opinions, right? Of 2 different opinions about the same thing. We're saying on our side of the House, if an opinion is detrimental, we believe under our side that it is for the best interest of the people that we restrict it from going on for too long. We say that if an opinion is bad for the majority of the society, we think that it's better if we restrict these from going on for too long, right? He's been calling us a dictatorship, a government for doing this, right? We believe that we are even more tyrannical if we hide the actual truth from the public, and that is where we stand as side government. Another thing that I'd like to ask side opposition is that in status quo right now, we're talking about how social media works. We already have restrictions in social media for certain issues, guidelines, how you can't talk about certain things and not get reprimanded for it. How is that different from us providing extra guidelines in order to not get the public opinion to be swayed, right? They talk about restriction of freedom of speech having harmful effects. When it's status quo, it's not like that at all. And in my arguments, I'll more elaborate on that further. So one thing that my Prime Minister has told you is that about the herd mindset or the sheep mindset. When one wrong opinion that's clearly wrong heavily outweighs the majority and it sets detrimental effects in the long term, we tell you opinions are okay as long as it doesn't concern the betterment of society. Opposition makes such a big deal out of trying to ban these speeches, like we're banning everything else and we're making it such a tyrannical thing to do, right? So another thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to reinforce the arguments coming from our side or the mechanisms that has been laid out by my Prime Minister in order to ensure that everything goes smooth and that we're on the same page for today. Now, first things first is the higher the profile, the higher the punishment. We do this is because we believe bigger platforms hold more power against the public and that they should be reprimanded more than the others. And in this debate, ladies and gentlemen, we have to concede no matter what, that we have to give up one thing or the other. We can't have both. We can't have both freedom of speech while trying to prioritize the environment, right? We win in this argument if we prove to you the reality of climate change, of man-made climate change, is more crucial than the importance of freedom of speech. And I'll tell you why. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on to my arguments on why should we deny the publication or speeches about denying man-made climate change, right? Rejected. Hold on. The first thing is that it increases awareness. On the contrary of what Leader of Opposition has stated, right? Like when they actually allow freedom of speech, it increases awareness as it opens more platforms for discussion. I think that on the contrary, it increases awareness the more we restrict or we deny these speeches from being made. Now, I'll be talking about 2 things in my argument today. The increases awareness part, as well as at the end of the argument, who suffers the most if we do not ban these publications or speeches, right? Something as heavy as climate change shouldn't be hidden from the public, ladies and gentlemen. Man-made climate change is especially something that we hold responsibility for, right? Something that we created. Man-made climate change is not something that we should hide. It is something that we see every day, even if you try to hide it from the public. You see deforestation, for example, deforestation in Pahang, right? You notice increased air quality index. You notice how the air seems very hazy. You notice how floods happen more than often. Like lately, right, in KL, floods are happening even when it was not supposed to happen. Landslides happen because of deforestation. Yet we lie to the public. We say that this is wrong, right? Like climate change is not something that's caused by man-made effects. And we say that this is wrong. So people get to know what's really happening. So how does this increase awareness? The knowledge of the public will influence many corporations to invest in saving the environment, because there's always something such as pressure coming from society, pressure coming from public, pressure from the people towards the government, coercion coming from the public will pressure the government to do something, enact more laws, set tighter regulations. This is what we call increases awareness compared to what leader of opposition has given you. We felt that this is more realistic if we compare it to status quo. Now, what happens if we still allow these publications and speeches about denying man-made climate change? We are persuading small circles of people to believe in these how how climate change is not caused by man-made matters. So, for example, this is the example that I've talked to you. In status quo,
You
when
alright?
freedom of speech is allowed, right? No, thank you. When freedom of speech is allowed, right? For example, anti-vaccinators, anti-vax. We have WhatsApp groups talking about how vaccines are dangerous, it doesn't work. And although science has proven its efficiency, a group of people who are in denial, they will always deny it until the end. And in return, this affects the safety or health care of the public. We tell you in things where it affects the lives involved. It is lives are at stake. The climate change affects the environment, affects the future of our generation. We tell you by restricting the opinions of these people, we tell you that it's better for the betterment of the society and the betterment of the nation. Giving a chance for these denials of man-made climate change are like giving opportunities for doubts and another layer of denials to appear. So at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, who suffers the most? This is an extent to what my prime minister has told you. Society will suffer the most from being in denial and having to suffer the drawbacks of climate change. We tell you that when society suffers from a lack of awareness, right, and no actions are being made, the environment will be affected in a way that it is in an even more worse situation, as people lack awareness enough to do anything about it, telling how it's not about climate change isn't about man-made issues, and therefore it shouldn't be a problem, right? We can just keep the other things going. Now, the final stakeholder is that our future generation is getting the worst part of everything, right? In the future, when everything is bad enough. So, until when are we going to keep this going? Until our future generation has had enough. So, I believe that by telling you everything that I've stated to you, I believe that in the end, this motion should stand, as it affects, and the effects of denying man-made climate change are heavier than the benefits of freedom of speech. And with that, I've never been prouder to propose. Thank you.
Okay, this House will thank the Deputy Prime Minister. I'd like to invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Okay. All right, I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, the government today wants to fix an environmental issue by destroying democracy, when in actual fact, the initiative that they should be taking is fixing the actual issue, not banning the rights of the individuals of their country. Now, before I move on to the two claims that will be stated today, starting with some rebuttals. Now, both the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister has mentioned how they both believe that environment outweighs the freedom of speech. But so that is to say that in their world, they believe that they can achieve peace by having a very pretty, beautiful world where human rights are constantly violated. Ladies and gentlemen, this does not look like a utopia. This looks like a dystopia that destroys the peace and order and the healthiness of the citizens. Her next point is that she said that we cannot have good environment if there is freedom of speech. That is to say that as long as people have the chance or the opportunity to say otherwise, then the environmental issues cannot be fixed. Ladies and gentlemen, do we seriously believe that in order to fix climate change, we need to ban speech? That is to say that instead of fixing drainage system, we should just ban speech. How does that correlate to the actual core issue? Because the core issue right now that the government should be taking is actual actions that should be that should be done to fix climate change, not taking actions that suppresses democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, something as important as climate change should not be hid from the people. This is a line that was said by the Deputy Prime Minister. We believe that it should not be hidden. So so any information regarding it should not also be hidden, because knowing that something is wrong is unimportant. That is what the government is trying to propose today, is that just because something is wrong, knowing that something is wrong, knowing what is wrong about an important issue is not important, when in fact knowing the good, the bad, and all sides of the argument that you are trying to promote is an essential part in actually sustaining its importance. Now, moving to my first point, why do we oppose the motion today is because we want to protect democracy. Why is this true? Because everyone has a right to choose, and restricting options is a form of oppression, despite how much the government tries to convince you that they are in fact democratic in their actions. It's actually otherwise. Secondly, why is it true is because freedom of expression is an essential element in democracy, and without it, then what kind of democracy are we actually talking about? Thirdly, banning peaceful expressions and publications through publications and speeches is tyrannical. Just like in the era of McCarthy in the US, where people weren't allowed to read on socialism solely because solely because it opposes the government's current point of view. That is actually a form of tyranny. Accept it. Accept it.
We're not denying speeches regarding climate change. We're only denying speeches regarding man-made climate change. How is that a restriction of freedom of expression?
Sorry, let me rephrase. Let me just rephrase. The government wants to ban the misinformations that they believe are about climate change, right? We believe as opposition that climate change is in fact man-made, and anyone who denies it is wrong. What opposition wants to propose today is that just because something is wrong, it should not be denied, because knowing what is wrong about something is also an essential element in maintaining its importance and the overall understanding of that issue. Now, going back to my point, why do we want to protect democracy? Because when democracy is not protected, government is accountable as illiberal. If government is free to ban publications and restrict speeches, then they are controlling the very thoughts, the minds of the people, which they do not hold any right upon. Now, this also encourages hatred and vendetta against the government and against all the people who are on the so-called right side of the argument. This causes people to express their thoughts and expresses their opinions in a more harmful way, because if they cannot get their points through peaceful expressions like publications and speeches on social media, then they will opt to do protests and riots that can actually damage the peace of that country. Now, why is it so important that we protect democracy? Because we want to maintain peace and order. Ladies and gentlemen, this is like a no-brainer. If we don't have democracy, then we do not have peace and order. We need to protect the country's democracy and avoid a tyrannical government, just like how the US was in the McCarthy era. We also need to protect the rights of all our citizens, despite them disagreeing with me, because saying that because by restricting the rights of a citizen that goes against the government is inevitably and it's in essence a tyrannical and authoritarian government. Now, next claim is we want to create more awareness by encouraging discussion and not just restricting rights. Why is this true? Because we can't correct what we don't know. If we don't know what it is that drives these people to go against the opinion that climate change is man-made, then we will never be able to correct them on that. Understanding every single point of view is an essential part in learning, and one-sided information is actually a form of propaganda that is promoted by the government right now. Opinions can change, ladies and gentlemen, which is why it's true that we can create more awareness by changing the opinions, but we can't change an opinion if that opinion is not even stated in the first place. Why is creating more awareness good? Because understanding all sides of a matter makes for a better discussion. Okay, intellect isn't flourished by constantly agreeing with what the government is giving out as information. intellect is only flourish when we are debating and having further discussions about the yes and whys and understanding all sides of the debate. It's also important that we help the ones who disagree to understand why they are wrong. Why is it important that we do these things? Because we want to encourage lifelong learning. There will be no feeling of superiority just because you have an opinion that is different from others, and just because and we are trying to teach the people who disagree that it is okay to be wrong, because you can recorrect yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, the opposition is proud to oppose.
Okay, this House like to thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition. I'd like to invite the government to end the substantive speeches of the government. Here.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Members of the chair, ladies and gentlemen, it seems today that side opposition is really straying away from the clashes that are actually happening in this debate, and they are not taking the clashes that have to be taken and to actually solve the end of the question and the big question in this debate, which is actually, is it justifiable to save the environment by sacrificing the freedom of speech? This is a big question and the most general part of this debate today. Is this true or not? All right, so in my speech, I will explain to you why this is true, why it is justifiable to save the environment by denying these types of propaganda, by denying these types of speeches that and publications that deny man-made climate change, and it will help the environment at the end of the day. I will tell you why. First of all, through my rebuttals, I rebut the leader of opposition and the deputy leader of opposition. I will straight on to explain and emphasize the clashes and show you clarity upon what the clashes are today. And last but not least, I'll give you a comparison of the tools that we have today by offered by side government and side opposition, right? So first of all, going to the leader of opposition, right? Leader of opposition, he stated that these that there has to be two sides to a debate, right? Two sides towards an argument. And the matter of fact is that the reality is that, yeah, sure, contradicting opinions are important, but the truth is that there is more important things to do now. The truth is that it's more important as we provide urgency to address this issue right now and here and now. The fact of the matter is that they are wasting their time, like taking their breath away, arguing with each other on this opinion, rather than actually doing something to reverse climate change at the end of the day. That is why it's so important. Besides that, the leader of opposition also stated that that by banning this policy, this policy of banning these types of information is really not helpful at the end of the day. Then what is really on side opposition? They have never given any counter proposal on what would help actually the environment at the end of the day. And this has not, even if they did, it was never really clearly stated. As we on side government, we give you a really clear way, or we give you a step-by-step narrative on how we can and will at the end of the day help the environment to become a better place. Besides that, moving on to the deputy leader of opposition, right? So the deputy leader of opposition basically argue on the fact that democracy is most important for the freedom of society, right? But the matter of fact is, like, let's take into account, like, let's look at it this way, right? All right, democracy is important. Yes, we agree on that on side government. But the matter of fact is, this is climate change, ladies and this is a big issue. This is an urgent issue that could end the entire world as we know it. And if we at the end of the day, if we let this go by and not take urgent and direct action towards it, we could never have a nation to actually rule democracy in the first place. Because honestly, at the end of the day, this thing is a very big problem. And how many lives do we have to sacrifice until we realize that we have to take really urgent issues and urgent actions towards to make sure that we combat climate change at the end of the day? Yeah, sure, PI.
Yes, you stated again and again that this is an urgent issue that must be prioritized. So you should prioritize policies that will help urgently, not by banning some freedom of speech that will not actually is an urgent solution.
So let me ask you, which one will take a shorter time to actually solve the problem? Having people to discuss about this for 1-2 years before they come to a conclusion, or actually putting down the actual facts from experts who have covered this case for years and years with sufficient and credible knowledge, and say to the public that yes, this is an urgent issue and we should react now. And that's what we're doing on side of government today. So the matter of fact is, are these people actually, even if we give like the benefit of the doubt to side opposition, right? If these people are actually being given given the opportunity to discuss about this topic, well, the matter of fact is that as humans, right, as the normal citizen, we are most likely we tell you that most probably these people are vulnerable, like childrens and elderly. They are vulnerable to accepting incredible knowledge, incredible information that is not from a reliable source, a reliable source, which will at the end of the day influence their thought process towards making worse decisions that we can avoid by having these types of information covered and denied to be published by on-side government, right? So what have we shown today, right? So this debate today is really centered about how to save the environment, right, actually, and not really about the freedom of speech, because at the end of the day, we take urgent matters into our own hands and we ensure that the environment is safe at the end of the day, right? We should not persuade the people against climate change and like not let them take this lightly, right? This is what will happen on side opposition's world, right? Because what's the question? The question is really is it right for us to let people spread the ideology of that we are not at fault and we are not and this is all conspiracy, right? We are not the fault. We're not the reason why our world is becoming a worse and worse place, and there's like icebergs melting, and there's like and there's like landslides and tsunamis all over the place. Like, why give the freedom to them to spread the propaganda and spread the incorrect news around, when we can actually portray the real news that has been done and dealt with and has been made proper by experts in the field, right? So let me give you the comparison of the world that we have today, right? Given by side opposition and government. So let's look at let's look at our side, right? Even if side government, let's say like, oh yeah, sure, opposition says we're not effective, right? Our worst case scenario would be that people and publishers will not be able to like publish these articles, and they won't spread the word and their freedom of speech, right? But however, on opposition's case, the worst case scenario is that these vulnerable people, like the elderly and children, will be led to easily believe that they are not at fault at the end of the day, and because of this, they will not do anything to go against climate change, right? They will think that they're not responsible, so they should do nothing, right? So let's look how this would look like better. Even let's give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Let's give the benefit of the doubt to side opposition, right? Even if they were right, the publishers can still spread the word on like the matters that are that they deny man-made climate change, right? And at the end of the day, this will still persuade these people to persuade a few people to go against climate change, right? But on government's case, we say that we ensure nobody is being persuaded by the unrealistic news and these information sources, and we ensure that we put our information out through proper research and proper extensive research by the experts in the field. With that, I'm very, very proud to propose. Thank you.
This also thank the Gaffoot for the speech and like to invite the awkward here.
Can you give me a minute? I take my paper.
Sure, whenever you're ready.
I start my speech in 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, today our side tell you why our side creates more awareness rather than India's side. First of all, I want to ask you a few questions. First question, do you prefer to watch the television and watch the National Geographic channel, or would you rather read and engage in Twitter or Facebook fights? Second question, as the clarification in my speech today is that in their word, their thoughts, the thoughts of the people who think about the wrong thing, these thoughts are enclosed in a place. And this is the thing that caused the herd mindset that they have been talking about, they have been babbling about even since they start debating. Because they stay in their own bubble. These people in their world stay in their own den, in their own bubble, and afraid to know what is the real thing. And when we believe that the real thing is climate change is man-made, and when they don't express their thoughts, they won't even know that what they are thinking about is wrong even in the first place. So getting into the context, people who initially don't care about climate because they believe in this propaganda such as denying the man-made climate change, they will in the end in our world know about the right thing, while in their world these people won't even know that what they are thinking about is wrong even in the first place. So as the weak speaker from the opposition side, I would like to rebut a few points coming from the government side. First of all, they talk about how these misinformed people will be influenced by media and it will create an echo chamber and herd mindset. But ladies and gentlemen, I tell you why this is very wrong. Because we could see that nowadays, there's a lot of debates and discussions happens in social medias and other kind of medias. But how is this connected with today's debate? I'll tell you why. Because when someone say a thing, and especially a wrong thing, people who knows the right thing will tend to like correct them, will tend to tell them the right thing. And lastly, in the end of the day, people who engage with that debate, people who joins the conversation will know the right thing, and thus will be able to do the right thing in the end of the day. And then they talk about how they are not denying the importance of right. But ladies and gentlemen, how? Because they just came here straight up denying the rights to speak of the people with minority ideas to express their findings or what they are thinking about. So this is why they are straight up denying the importance of the freedom of speech. Then they also talk about how the climate change is more important than rights to speak. But we prove to you, our opposition side prove to you why the rights to speak is important to create awareness, even if this what they are believing in is wrong in the first place. Then they came out and say that having different opinions are okay. But ladies and gentlemen, if it is okay, then why are you stopping them from expressing it when it is actually when it might not be wrong at all? Because it shows that you are a cruel government that only suppress the voices of the minority, and you don't want to actually face this problem even in your world. And then they touch about how when you have a higher profile, you will have a higher punishment, but they didn't even elaborate about this point, so we won't engage on this point at all. Then they also touch on who suffer the most when this debate takes place. But we agree on this. We agree that the society will suffer a lot, and people are in this, and the future generation will suffer a lot. But ladies and gentlemen, we prove to you why if we want to make them suffer less, or we want to stop this suffering, why our side cater to these problems more rather than in their world, where these people's thoughts are enclosed in a bubble and they won't even in the end of the day know the right thing, and the society won't know that these thoughts are actually wrong. So then they also talk about how it is justified to sacrifice freedom of speech for the sake of an environment. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, in their world, their side only gets one, which is that they get the good, they get the environment, but they actually fail to enhance, they fail to promote the freedom of speech in their people. While in our world, we promote freedom of speech while we could actually preserve the environment. Because I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this both freedom of speech and the environment, it goes hand in hand. Meaning that when the people know what to do, when the people knows the right thing and the wrong thing, and they would society would tend to do the right thing. So in the end of the day, we will able to stop the climate change because they know that these things are wrong through discussions and all of that things. Yeah, right.
What world would you have left to have freedom of speech in if you take so long to discuss about the climate change when you don't even solve it at the end of the day?
Can you repeat? Okay.
What world would you have left to have freedom of speech in if you don't address the problem of climate change by discussing about it each and every day?
Ladies and gentlemen, if the government side are to talk about the time that we are going to discuss about this, then let's talk about how when there is more important thing to do. So the government side talk about how okay, this thing is important thing, it is an important thing to discuss on. But why babbling on this kind of topic when they should have uh when they should have uh, let out their money and use their money to do for a better cause. For example, they could just use the money and energy to debate about this to ban open burning, to ban littering, for something that could actually work in the end of the day, for the policies that could actually work. So that is moving on to the next rebuttal. So if this is important, if this debate is very important at all, then why are you wasting time and energy over debating over these small things where you can actually spend your money on making policies that work, that actually work. For example, like what I stated, ban open burning, ban littering, that actually works to to preserve the nature that we have nowadays. So that is why, ladies and gentlemen, we tell you why our side creates more awareness, because these people start, when they know that they are wrong, they could be corrected by other people in the society through this kind of medias, and hence that is why our side create more awareness. So what the opposition side have brought to the table, we talk to you how the government are forcing everyone to think about the same thing and how it does not work and it is not wrong at all. And why is it good? Because they can learn when we does not suppress this thing, they can learn the truth and it will spark education. And we also talk about how democracy is equals to peace. So if we don't give them the democracy, if we don't give them the freedom of speech that they are supposed to have, it will disrupt the peace in our country. And hence that is why in this motion today, this house would ban any speech and publication denying man-made climate change should be opposed, simply because we know that simply because it is better if we don't, because of freedom of speech and democracy. That's all from me, proud to oppose.
Okay, this sounds like the thank the wait, like to invite the opposite side. Okay.
Thank you very much. I will start my reply speech in 3, 2, 1. Some final remarks to everything that have been told to us by the opposition side. First, the opposition said that it is okay to compromise a human right just because they believe that something is better. But we know that oppression solves nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot change someone's mind by using oppression. Oppression towards their right cannot change someone because people are more tend to riot, and this does not actually solve the issue at hand. It creates more problem. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition side also talks about anti-vaccine movement. When you block the freedom of speech, ladies and gentlemen, we can see that how many riots have happened because you block the freedom of speech of these anti-vaxxers. And this, we from the opposition side prefers a world where this discussion only happens in books and in social media, but does not take this discussion in a form of oppression, in a form of riots on the street. We believe that this discussion, although it is a heated discussion, it is better than having a discussion or having protests on the streets, ladies and gentlemen. And the opposition also state that urgent policies must be taken. But what they fail to realize is that this policy of banning freedom about about climate change is not an urgent policy. This is a low. This policy of banning freedom of speech would not get them anywhere, because as I state, all of our team have stated, have more urgent policies. What are more urgent policies? Such as banning open burning, banning littering, and not focusing on banning freedom of speech. And it does not lead anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. And discussing it in this whole motion, ladies and gentlemen, discussing in books, discussing in social media, it does not determine what policies the government will pass, ladies and gentlemen. So the government should look at better policies and not making a policy to ban freedom of speech that will not affect a lot to the climate change problem. Ladies and gentlemen, for the reply speech, 3 questions I shall answer. The first is freedom of speech or solving climate change. The government is only believe that freedom of speech should be stripped out. They should take away the right of human to freedom of speech because they believe that they need to do so. But what the opposition says today, that why can't you have both? Why can't you have freedom of speech but make suitable and best policies to solve climate change, ladies and gentlemen? So this shows that it is a win from the opposition side because the government, as we stated again and again, is trying to take away the human right. So ladies and gentlemen, our aim, both government and opposition, is to solve climate change in the long run. But which principle is better? Principle coming from the government side is only to ban people talking about climate change, but the opposition is encouraging the government to actually take urgent and severe action to actually solve climate change. Which principle is better? Of course, opposition principle, to encourage strict and suitable policies to actually first prevent climate change, and second, make policies to repair the climate change effects that have happened. Ladies and gentlemen, the last clash is taking urgent matters. The government is banning people from talking about it. That is their entire model. Their entire case is banning people from talking about it. The opposition believe that but by talking about it, it creates no problem. But what should be done is that government must make urgent policies, as I repeated again and again, to ban this climate change problem for worsening. Ladies and gentlemen, it is to note that freedom of speech does not cause climate change. So what the government must do is ban the cause of climate change, not ban freedom of speech. That must be clear from the government side. That is all from the opposition side. We are proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
Okay, this was then the op reply. This sounds like about the draft reply to the debate. Here.
Hold on, give me a sec. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, 3 parts of my reply speech. The first is what we said and why we're right. The second is what they said and why they're wrong. The third is why we bring home the win for today's debate. Ladies and gentlemen, first things first, I'll be summing up by what on our side, what have we said to you today? So from the get-go, my Prime Minister has told you her points is that man-made denialism is not beneficial because the main goal is to provide doubt and not the truth. This is true when we tell you from the get-go that when you distribute such doubtful statements or claims, right, coming from people who deny man-made climate change, we tell you that this is very detrimental because it creates a herd mindset. We tell you that it creates such a detrimental mindset in that it affects society in more ways than you can ever imagine. She told you that when people are affected by this, more problems are to surface, right? More problems are to appear to the surface, and nothing will be solved at the end of the day. From my side, I told you how it helps increases awareness, despite opposition's claim of saying, "Oh, they said nothing about how, on our side, we never try to help to solve climate change. We never tell you the options. We never tell you the ways on how, on our side, it is more efficient in ways of solving climate change." I told you that it influences corporations to do better. When we deny such false claims, right, we're educating the public that if the problem comes from man-made, coming from our side, coming from it is our fault that the environment is the way it is right now, it will influence corporations to do better because people will have rallies, right? People will try to stand up for themselves. People will try to say that man-made climate change is climate change due to man-made is bad, right? It will influence corporations to do better. It will influence the government to be persuaded by the public. But opposition turns a blind eye to this and says we've done nothing. We've not thought about how to help the environment instead of stripping away democracy. They talked about how we're tyrannical. We're very we are a dictatorship government, right? We don't appreciate the rights of the people. We strip away the rights of the people. We say that by forsaking a small piece of democracy, ladies and gentlemen, not the whole picture. We're only telling you don't distribute or don't publish or give speeches about denying man-made climate change. This issue is to help save the environment and to possibly save our future. We say that it is a fair trade-off on our side. We're willing to give this up if it means a better future. Opposition, however, refuses to talk about how the world will look like in 10, in 20, in 30 years from now. They refuse to talk about that. They only want to talk about how the world looks like in their side, how the world looks like now, which is an immature and selfish decision to do. They talked about how we're tyrannical because we restrict the democracy of the people, right? We told you that it doesn't work that way. It's different from status quo, and that gives you a clearer picture of whether or not their portrayals are realistic. And even if worse comes to worse, people rally about the freedom of speech, right? It's very unlikely or it's insignificant if it's viewed in a bigger picture. From the beginning, they tried to make it seem like we ban speeches regarding climate change as a whole, when really we're just banning speeches and publications about denying man-made climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, just because you have freedom of speech, it doesn't give you the right, it doesn't give you the option to be an extremist. And we say that there is sometimes where lines should be drawn in today's debate, not to give these people the chance to be an extremist when it comes to that. So we say that at the end of the day, our benefits are heavier because it impacts society in the long run, while their freedom of speech only gives them the option to talk about it and creates even more confusion while not taking action at the end of the day. We say that it is very detrimental for the betterment of society, and as a functional government, we help the people, we help the future. Now, as a ending line, right, we saying that our side takes a much more shorter time to solve climate change problems, even if slowly but surely, compared to their side that stays in a bubble, debating about the same thing over and over again, and they will always stay there. And with that, I end my speech. Thank you very much.